Great radio stations across the land, joepags.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email. It's all right there, plus the live video feed. It's the Joe Pags Show. Glad to have you here. Really glad to have back the Republican senator of the great state of Texas. It is the one and only Ted Cruz. Ted, how are you?
Pags, I'm doing terrific. How are you doing?
I'm living the dream. So we'll get into this in a little while in earnest, but I asked you earlier if you were sitting down gingerly after Chris Cuomo's pretty sure he kicked your rear end the other day in that debate on CNN. Did you sit down okay today?
I am serene and peaceful, and it was, it was a food fight. I mean, anytime you go on CNN, you get some of that. But Cuomo, I went on his show and he began yelling and screaming and insulting me and kind of losing his mind.
Right.
And in particular, he didn't like it when he started attacking Texas, Georgia, and Florida for how they dealt with COVID, and they just happen to be states that have Republican majorities and Republican governors. And I pointed out to him that his brother has presided over the state with the worst death rate in the country, and that the public policy that his brother put in place, in particular, sending people who are COVID positive into nursing homes, has proven to be a tragic public policy mistake.
I have to interject this. He also acted as if you were attacking his family. I found this to be so strange. Chris Cuomo knows, I'm pretty sure he knows, Ted, maybe he doesn't, but I'm pretty sure he knows his brother's the governor. So if you're the governor of the state, you're a public official elected by the people who's made decisions that ended up in the deaths of many people in that state. He made it like you were personally attacking his family. I mean, that was the biggest juvenile mistake I've seen in a debate in a very long time. I mean, when he said that, did you think to yourself, wait a second, I'm not attacking your family. This guy's the governor.
I wasn't surprised because Cuomo has a primetime show on CNN, and he uses it as essentially the press operation for his Democratic governor, brother. I mean, it's, he has his brother on periodically, and they just do love fest where the guy doesn't pretend to be a journalist. CNN, they exist to hate President Trump, and to be clear. So when I criticized a very specific public policy decision that was made in New York and New Jersey, and Cuomo said, well, everyone did that. Well, no, that's not true. Right. Texas didn't do that. We didn't force nursing homes to accept COVID positive people, and which resulted in a massive death toll in New York and New Jersey. Rather than discuss the public policy, he just engaged in insults. And, one of the cracks Cuomo had is I said, listen, obviously your brother wasn't intending to do harm.
Right.
And Chris Cuomo goes, well, that's very Christian of you.
Yeah, what was that? Also, now, again, the Cuomo family, I think they say they're Catholic, which I think is Christian. Well, I grew up Catholic. I think I know. But I'm confused by his attitude. Now, I'll give, maybe you don't want to get into the personality traits, but I will, because I'm another Italian guy. He's a typical rich kid who grew up in like the Hamptons, who was the son of the governor back then, Mario Cuomo, who hasn't really had to to lift any heavy bricks or dig any ditches in his life, which is fine. I don't begrudge him that. That's his life. But then he pretended he was in quarantine. He wasn't. He was out at his property in the Hamptons. He pretends that he's a local street tough guy when somebody called him Fredo. And then when he had you on the program, he actually tried to denigrate you, saying Alan Dershowitz says you're his best student ever. I don't see it. So I don't understand why invite Ted Cruz on the program if you're just going to attack him as if you're some kid from the Bronx or from Brooklyn, which he's not, and act like a tough guy. What do you think the purpose of that is? Just to feed throw some red meat at the few people that watch him? Is that what the deal was?
Yeah, and look, if you look at the respective bases, his left-wing base was thrilled that he was insulting me, and that's a lot of where the left is they don't want to actually have a substantive conversation about what policies work and what don't, how we minimize the death rate, how we protect people from COVID, how we get people back to work. Like an intelligent conversation and a civil conversation is apparently not something that Cuomo or CNN believes in anymore. He just wants to scream and yell and insult. And, in my experience, when you start screaming and engaging in ad hominem attacks, it is a sign that you're not able to defend the substance of your position. Yeah. But I will say that his left-wing Twitter base loved it. Insult him again, and it's kind of the gladiator blood sport. Now, look, to be honest, conservatives were pretty happy that I was punching back at him. But to be clear, I wasn't punching back with the kind of personal insults he was using. I was engaged in a real substantive discussion, and he wanted nothing to do with the substance.
It is Senator Ted Cruz, great state of Texas. His book is out. It's called One Vote Away, How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History. It's number one. Is it number one, or it's going up the charts on Amazon?
Number one in the country on Amazon.
Bam. Go and get it right now at all the usual sources. One Vote Away, the new book by Ted Cruz. I do have the book. I haven't read it yet. I will very soon. I want to talk a little bit about COVID-19. You right now are self-quarantining, right?
Yep.
Do you have it? Have you been tested?
So I don't have it. I was tested on Friday. I came out negative. The reason I'm in a self-quarantine right now is last week I was with Senator Mike Lee, and Mike tested positive, and he had it. He's been sick. He's feeling better now, but he was hurting for a couple of days, and so I had spent quite a bit of time with him. He's by far my closest friend in the Senate, and so the Capitol physician advised me to self-quarantine. I'm here alone in my D.C. apartment. It actually stinks because Heidi and the girls are back in Texas. I wish I were in Texas, but I'm here instead, living the life of a bachelor. Yesterday I was frying up some hamburger helper for dinner. It was really, quality stuff.
Takes you back to college. It's Ted Cruz, great senator from the great state of Texas. What's interesting to me with the whole president getting COVID deal, I found that, because you said something to Cuomo that was true, and I'll relate it to Jim Acosta. You said he broke you. And he did. This president broke the media, broke the left media. They can't hide anymore. They actually have to show how biased they are. So the president gets, it's confirmed that he's got COVID-19, leaving the White House, going to Marine One to go to Walter Reed. On the way leaving the White House to get to Marine One, he doesn't stop with the gaggle and take questions. Acosta immediately, almost begrudgingly, and he was so completely off-put, he tweets, the president went to Marine One and didn't take any questions. Now, Ted, what would have happened had the president walked over with COVID-19 in front of Acosta and opened it up for questions? They would have said, the president tried to infect us all with COVID-19. They are shattered, aren't they? They are completely broken.
They're consumed with hate. And it's really, watching this last week as the president and first lady both contracted COVID, look, anyone rational and reasonable, whether you agree or disagree with President Trump, you might be a Democrat and disagree with him, but a normal human being, if the president is sick with a life-threatening disease, you hope he gets better, you lift him up in prayer. And what is bizarre is watching CNN, watching MSNBC, watching the media, that they're just so filled with hate that their reactions, they're angry that the president seems to have gotten better. They're angry that he didn't die. And we used to be able to have political discussions without wishing death on your political opponents. And that seems beyond the reach of today's mainstream media. It's
Senator Ted Cruz. His book is called One Vote Away, How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History. Such an important read with Amy Coney Barrett right there, ready to go in I guess right there on deck. And I think she's going to be confirmed, and you can go into that in a second for me if you don't mind. But I want to finish up on the media and the president and the coverage. He came back from Walter Reed. He's doing better than expected. He's doing videos. He's signing all sorts of paperwork while he was there. He wanted to go back to the White House. As he leaves Marine One and goes to the White House, did you hear what Acosta asked him? He yelled it at him.
Was it the super spreader line? Was that
Sir, are you a super spreader? Ted, what is the president supposed to say? How dumb is that? Now, is it your belief, like it is mine, that people like Acosta scream stuff out like that so they can now go on CNN at 6 o'clock or 7:30 or whatever and say, I asked the president if he was a super spreader and he refused to answer?
All right, let me ask you this, Pags. I'm going to take the high road, but let me ask you, how do you think Chris Cuomo would react to that question? What would he say in response?
If somebody saw him out and about in New York City and they called him a super spreader, I think his reaction would be worse than it was when somebody called him Fredo. And you know that, and that's why you set that up for me like that. The guy would freak out. He'd be bulging his muscles. He'd be lifting weights. He'd be telling him, don't you ever. And then he'd wait for 3 people to get between him and then act like he wants to fight the guy. So you're right. It's a great question that answers my question. It's Ted Cruz. And you took the high road, by the way, which is nice. Go ahead.
Just for the record, like you, I'm part Italian too, and in fact, I think I am the first. I'm Cuban, Irish, and Italian. I think I'm the first Italian American senator from Texas. I believe.
Wow. See, you should have brought that up to Cuomo. What's he going to do with that? Because he acts like this Italian kid from The Godfather. It is Senator Ted Cruz. Always appreciate the time and the access. I talked to Rudy Giuliani. I've talked to other people who have uncovered what's going on in Ukraine and China and Russia when it comes to the Biden family. In fact, Giuliani calls it the Biden crime family. There is an attachment to China that he can't get away from. He could talk tough right now, but you and I both know that Joe Biden is not tough on China. You've been uncovering things, and you're actually asking for legislation when it comes to completely rebuking what China is doing and maybe punishing China because of how it's treating people, the Muslims that are there, people who are dissenters that are there. They're either killed, they're having their organs harvested, they're put in work camps, they're put in re-education camps. Ted, we don't know much at all about what's happening in China. What do you know? And is that going to affect Biden next month?
Well, what China is doing is horrific. They are torturers. They are murderers. They are liars. They are the most significant geopolitical threat the United States faces for the next century. I just introduced legislation that would punish their use of eugenics. In particular, they're targeting the Uyghurs, which are an ethnic and religious minority in China. They've got 1 million Uyghurs right now in concentration camps. By the way, the NBA was using Uyghur teenagers in basketball camps where they were being beaten and physically abused. Wow. But the NBA makes so much money in communist China that it was willing to overlook the abuse of these teenagers. And not only that, they engage in the Chinese Communist government engages in horrific practices of forced abortions where they're trying to essentially wipe out the Uyghurs. And so I introduced legislation to sanction Chinese communist officials who engage in practices of forced abortions and eugenic targeting, which is a grotesque human rights violation. And by the way, regardless of your position on the right to life, everybody ought to agree that forcing a mother to abort her child against her will is horrific and evil, and sadly, it is common practice from the Communist Party of China.
It's reminiscent of what Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood did in the black community back in the day. They would make deals with the local black pastor, and the local black pastor would insist that a young black girl who got pregnant would abort it. I mean, that's not different. She was a eugenicist, and we all know that now. It's Ted Cruz, Republican, the great state of Texas, tedcruz.org. Go to his website. One vote away, how a single Supreme Court seat can change history. There is a push, Ted, to turn Texas blue. There is a major push. In fact, a bunch of celebrities put out a video just this week about how Texas needs to go blue. Wendy Davis is showing up again, taking on Chip Roy, our friend, attempting to turn Texas blue. There's a real fear because every big city is now Democrat in Texas. Every single one. San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, El Paso. You want to fill in the blanks. They're all now run by a bunch of leftists. So is there a real possibility it can go blue if people sit on their hands?
Listen, I think it's dangerous. Texas is a battleground right now. The Democrats are flooding millions of dollars. John Cornyn's Democratic opponent raised over $13 million in the last reporting cycle, and they are flooding cash into the state. Every poll that's done in the state show Trump and Biden within a point or two of each other. I think we're going to win Texas. I think Trump's going to win Texas. I think Cornyn will get reelected, but we can't take it for granted. Because, and you put your finger on it, that where the population is in Texas, the biggest population is the suburbs surrounding the cities, and suburban voters in Texas and nationally have been trending purple. And we've really got to go and make the case about the stakes of this election.